Hello everyone, welcome to another Wartelio video. My name is Lance and I will be giving my honest reactions to the latest Battletome, Blades of Khorne. This army is something that's actually kind of near and dear to me because when I started out with the Warhammer universe as a kid, I started out with a Khorne themed Chaos Space Marine army, and Khorne has like inspired a lot of my favorite original characters in Dungeons and Dragons, and is kind of like the style or mythos that I'm really into. But enough about that. Let's get to the battle tome. Before I go on, however, I want to say that a lot of the references that I am going to be pulling up tonight are from AOS Coach and Goonhammer. If you haven't watched AOS Coach's videos or haven't subscribed to his channel, I highly recommend you do so. He is a real treasure in the community, and he puts in so much effort into making all this information available to us at the time that the news embargo is lifted by GW. So it'd be super awesome if there's a way for us to give back to him. Anyways, getting on to Blades of Khorne. Allegiance abilities. There are a lot of changes to like the options that Khorne has right now, and one of them is that Locust Fury has changed. Instead of being able to reroll ones when you're within a certain range of demon heroes or greater demons, demons now have a 5+ ward save against any type of damage if a demon unit is outside 8 inches of any enemy unit. This is actually really insane because this essentially cucks a lot of ranged armies right now, like Lumineth Realm Lords, Caradron Overlords. There's a lot of ranged lords, and also Disciples of Tzeentch. So unless they're willing to sacrifice a unit to get within 8 inches to negate Locus of Fury, then Khorne units will be a lot harder to kill at range, particularly the demons, which, as you'll see later, hit like trucks. They used to hit like trucks already, but now they hit like bigger trucks. So the second allegiance ability that was introduced in this tome is Murderous to the Last. Whenever one of your bloodbound units die or is slain by a melee weapon, but against an enemy unit within 3 inches, they can deal a mortal wound and a 5-up. This is similar to the Stormcast ability where they explode upon death. However, for Stormcast, you roll a dice equal to the wound characteristic, I believe, and you need to roll on 6s. With Murderous to the Last, it's 1 die per fallen mortal. So if you have a unit of, let's say, 30 Blood Reavers and they all die within 3 inches of an enemy, then you roll... in melee, then you roll 30 dice, and for every 5-up, that's a mortal wound. To my understanding, and we'll get to the War Scrolls later, Blood Warriors roll 2 dice for this, and Heroes roll 3. And last one, the last allegiance ability that'll apply to all of Khorne's units is Hatred of Sorcery. It's a 5-up spell shield against abilities and effects of endless spells and spells cast by enemy units. They actually fixed this from the White Dwarf, because in the White Dwarf article that had the rule for this beforehand, you had a spell shield of 6-up for any spell. So there was a time when Khorne was actually teching a lot of was taking Arcane Tome and Chronomatic Cogs with Be'lakor to try and trigger that spell shield with their own spells. So you'd see these Bloodthirsters with Arcane Tomes and it'd be super ridiculous. In both iterations of Hatred of Sorcery, though, any negated spells generate Blood Tithe, which I think is very fancy. Speaking of Blood Tithe, the system is back, where every time a unit is destroyed, you gain a Blood Tithe point, regardless of whether it's your unit or your opponent's. The biggest change to the Blood Tithe rewards table, though, is that instead of it activating at the start of a hero phase, it now activates at the end of either hero phases, which means that you can no longer do this before your opponent can do Finest Hour or have some sort of start of hero phase way, or some sort of hero phase way to get out of dodge. Like, if you're Gits, you can teleport out if you don't get it countered or anything. The table has also changed quite a bit. With 1 Blood Tithe point, you can move 3 units that are not in combat for D6, and you can end within 3 inches of enemy units. I think this is really interesting. Kind of on the, it's very techy. I think it'd be very interesting to do this at the end of your enemy's hero phase, and then move a unit within combat range of the opponent to stop them from moving. It only costing one blood type is absolutely bonkers. I can imagine a Khorne player using at the double on multiple units if they can get the aspect of the champion to do that, to move within, let's say, 4 inches of an enemy, and then on the opponent's and not charging, and on the enemy's turn using this to pin them all in place, forcing them to either retreat or not be able to advance their board position. So it's kind of nuts. The second ability is Spell Eater Curse, which is the same. It is unbind a spell without a roll. I think the wording is changed slightly. It used to be the spell is not successful, but now it's unbind the spell without a roll. I'm gonna have to double check this later, but it's basically your auto unbind, which I think is very important, especially now, as I'm speaking of this in Season 2, where Tzeentch and Lumineth Realm Lords are very strong in the worldwide meta. Brass Meat Skull Meteor used to be the 5 blood type point ability, and it used to be garbage. It used to just hit one unit for D3 and then a bunch for like 1, unless you roll a 6 or something and it deals D3. Now, you target the unit on the battlefield and roll 8 dice. For each 5 up, you deal a mortal wound, and for 3 ups, for monsters, and you roll 3 ups for monsters or units of 10 or larger. This is so much more consistent now, and it's really good at sniping heroes. Though, with all the other stuff on this list, I really think that this is more situational than most. Apoplectic Frenzy is something that is hard to say in the moment, but basically it lets you fight in the hero phase. Being able to fight at the end of the hero phase is a really big deal, since you get to pick a battle tactic, and then let's say you want to do eye for an eye or gaining momentum or something like that. It's an easier way for you to confirm being able to do this. Not just that, but in the current season, you have a heroic action that lets you fight in the hero phase, and it doesn't exactly say that you can only fight once in the hero phase at the moment. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. But you get to do that, and then you get to use this ability, which I think is pretty nuts. And technically, you can do both of them during your enemy's turn, which gives you as a Khorne player so much ridiculous, weird, out of sequence fighting tech. The fifth one is Rising Hatred. It gives you +1 to your Hatred of Sorcery rolls. And to my understanding, based on what I watched an AOS coach's video, it can stack. So if for whatever reason you have 10 blood type during the course of the game, in your hero phase, you get to do, like on one hero phase, you get to do Rising Hatred, and then on the next hero phase, you do Rising Hatred again. That turns your 5-up spell shield into a 3-up spell shield. And every time you succeed on that, then you get a blood type point, which I think is nuts. So if your opponent uses endless spells, or your opponent has a tech list that uses Storm of Searing White Light, you can activate that on a 3-up. Let's say you do it, you stack it, and for every 3-up you get, you can basically get a blood type point, and just put it back onto this table. For 6 blood type, -1 rend to all of your units, which I think is bonkers, because especially with the context that you're playing a Chaos faction, and Chaos factions with summons tend to be stronger the later the game goes, because you can summon units to replenish your action economy and your army, while your opponent is basically battered and beaten already at this point. Having the extra rend to push them off the edge and strengthen your attacks is going to be nuts. Let the Blood Flow. For 7 blood type, you can roll a die for each enemy unit in combat, and on a 2+, you deal D3 mortal wounds. I think this has crazy potential, but right now on paper, it doesn't seem very exciting. And the last one, Slaughter Triumphant, which also can be stacked if you can somehow generate 16 blood type in a single game. All of your units, including your Bloodthirster, including Skarbrand, including, well, basically everything, has +1 attack for the rest of the game. I think it's pretty good, pretty niche. I can see myself playing with the lower point Blood Tithe rewards or summons, though. Still, The potential that all of these brings is kind of nuts. You can only now use one Blood Tithe reward per hero phase. So I think that's a pretty good balance. All of these are pretty meaningful, but Apoplectic Frenzy is probably still gonna be my favorite. Summoning. So I'm covering this. I'm covering like part of the screen, so I'm sorry. That's basically gonna be the Bloodmaster Herald of Khorne. Let me see if I can. Nah, let's just roll with it. So for some wait, am I covering? No, I'm not covering something all the time. Okay, I'm gonna do a quick adjustment to this. Okay, no, it's not working. Let's see. All right, you know what? Never mind. It's okay. Not a big deal. So for summoning, you've got everything increased in summoning points. Everything went up by about 1. So the Flesh Hounds used to cost 2. The Bloodmaster used to cost 2. Bloodmaster is the one at the very bottom that my screen is kind of blocking right now. Bloodthirster costs 10 now instead of 8. All the Bloodthirsters cost 10. They removed Exalted Bloodthirster from the list, which means that there is probably going to be a push to remove Forge World models from the battle tomes or the official tomes. Overall, these are very spicy. I think that this is usually best if you are on the back foot. The Blood Tithe rewards, in my opinion, are much better for like winning and better for trying to get additional action economy or attacks during your opponent's turn. But this is definitely a good contingency for if things are not going particularly well. So I switched myself to the other side just so that you could see the sub-factions. There are 6 sub-factions, same as last time, except a lot of these are more internally balanced. In the last book, Reapers of Vengeance was the obvious pick for most competitive Khorne players because it allows you to use a command ability that lets you pick a unit to fight immediately, similar to Feast Day that Flesh Eater Courts has. But now it's changed to add 1 to hit rolls against heroes and grants additional Blood Tithe on a kill. It's far less exciting, but I think that if I was playing Demons, I would probably pick Reapers of Vengeance. The other 2 are also really good, though. For Baleful Lords, Bloodthirsters fighting within 8 inches of their other Bloodthirster homies will always get top profile for their fights, except Skarbrand, because this would essentially be a weird nerf if Skarbrand had to fight a top profile. More on that later. Bloodlords is the 3rd demon sub-faction, and this is the Bloodleather folk-centric one. If you charge with a Bloodleather unit, and I think this will also apply to Blood Crushers and anything that has the tag word for the keyword Bloodleather, they deal mortal wounds on a 5-up with their to hit effect instead of a 6 on the charge. I think this makes Bloodleathers really crazy because, as you'll see later on, there are ways for the army to add +1 to attack now, fight multiple times, and also Bloodleathers and most of the units have added extra attacks to their profiles. Now let's talk about the 3 Bloodbound sub-factions. When you say Bloodbound, you normally think of mortals. So Skullfiend Tribe now gets Strike First on a charge roll of 8+. So it's like this weird Gimp Night Hunt ability where you get special charges on a higher roll. Also, Skull Reapers become Battle Line. The Flayed is the second one. They get a 5-up ward save for mortals who've already fought that turn. Kind of weird. I would actually prefer it if you got a 5-up ward for units that have not yet fought, instead of, actually, it's kind of nice, I guess, if you're not sure if your unit can finish the enemy off, but still, could be a little better. It's still a bit on the janky side, in my opinion. And lastly, the Gore Tithe. I think this is the best one from last season. Still, in my opinion, still the best one. But again, you have to test things out to see if it's good or not. You get +1 to wound when attacking enemies. when attacking grammar. Attacking enemies on a point you don't control. So this one lets you play very aggressively. And as you can see later, they've reworked a lot of the abilities of the mortals to be able to move consistently faster. A lot. You'll be able to run and charge. They'll be surprisingly mobile, and the mortals are tanky and also want to die with the murder rolls, as I discussed earlier. The murder rolls being the murderous to the last ability from the allegiance abilities I discussed. So yeah, 3 different styles. Reapers of Vengeance is still probably my favorite just because I think the Blood Tithe system is the heart and soul of the Blades of Khorne army. Next, Grand Strategies. They got 4 from this book. Blood Legions on the March makes its return from the Blood Legions March makes its return from the White Dwarf article. Summon any Khorne demon units with Blood Tithe points in every battle round after the first. Little harder to do now, especially since the minimum is 3. So by battle round 2, you need to have gotten 3 Blood Tithe at the very least. I'm not so crazy about this one. Bring me a worthy skull. Your enemy picks a hero at the start of the game to count as a worthy foe for you to kill. Your general also has to survive. So this is reminiscent of the earlier 3rd edition Vendetta Grand Strategy. It's really thematic and really cool, though. You basically have to pick a worthy enemy skull, claim it for the Blood God. I think it's very thematic. I love it. Reap the Blood Tithe. You have to get a unique Blood Tithe reward in each battle round after the first, and you may not repeat rewards. If it didn't have that second clause of not repeating rewards, I think this would be my favorite. But I think it's very risky not being able to fully utilize the full flexibility of the Khorne army. Saving Spell Eater Curse to counter enemies, to unbind enemy spells every turn, I think, is really good utility that you should not try to forego. So Reap the Blood Tithe is cool, not my favorite. And the last one, Disciples of Carnage. You complete this tactic if you complete 4 tactics from the tomes for the Skull Throne list, then you get to complete this, which segues perfectly into the battle tactics. There's a couple here. I don't think any of these are like mind-blowing or kind of change the game a lot. Blood for the Altar makes its return. Kill an enemy unit who is within 8 inches of the Skull Altar. Pick an enemy wizard and kill it is another one. Pick a friendly unit and have them kill 8 models. So these 3 make their return from the White Dwarf. The 3 new ones are No Cowards Among Us, where all your units have to be within 8 inches of an enemy unit by the end of the turn. This is much better than the Orruk Warclan one, which requires to have all your models, not units, be within 12 inches of enemy units at the end of the turn and can only be done in first or second turns. This one can be very interesting or good if your opponent, if you have a way to stop your opponent from redeploying 6 inches, I guess, and if there are very few units left on the table. Seems like a very good late game battle tactic if you have like bottom of the round and you don't need to want to kill something. Leave none standing. You pick a friendly unit in combat, but by the end of the turn, must have fought in the combat phase and have no enemy units within 3 inches. So this is very interesting. At first, I thought that you could just trigger the hero phase fight or Apoplectic Frenzy to help you clear this. But you need to have fought in the combat phase and have no enemy units within 3 inches. So, in theory, you shouldn't even have to kill that enemy unit with the unit that you chose for this. You could technically fight in the hero phase, charge into something else with multiple units, and as long as that unit doesn't have enemy units within 3, then this one works. It's just a roundabout way of, having to clear the space in front of you. Lastly, the battlefield runs red. You succeed if 4 units were destroyed this turn. So if you have a few units that are about to die and are engaged, then this is a really, really good way for you to score tactics in that regard. A little bit trickier because, you need 4 units to die. And if you can't... And sometimes killing 1 unit is hard enough, but making sure 4 units are destroyed. By the way, this includes your own units. So if you have units that are at the edge of dying, like the lone 1 Blood Reaver, you can have him charge into an enemy Maw Crusher or something and get that thing killed. I think that the battle tactics are good. The battle tactics are all very interesting and are all centered around Khorne's, murder boner. However, none of these feel overpowered because they don't have any way of slowing down the pace of the game, or rather, you don't have any passive battle tactics. All of these are active. You can't just stay outside an objective and do the hokey pokey like Fire Slayers can, where if your opponent controls more and suddenly now you control more, you get it. Or with, I think Seraphon has one where if 3 monsters are running alongside each other in enemy territory. Sorry, that's not a good example. A good example would be the Slanesh one, which I think I'll talk about with Nico in the near future, where if you don't control an objective, you control it now with mortals and demons, you get it. It's basically like the against the odds or ferocious advance kind of battle tactics. You don't get any in the Khorne tome, so this tome still rewards you from being aggressive. It doesn't really have any of those passive tactics. Love all of them. Very thematic, very cool. Okay, this is where I'm going to be taking straight from the slides of AOS Coach because I couldn't find... retyping all of this kind of doesn't really work for me. I'm going to skim over some of these and just go straight for the ones I think are interesting. If you want a more comprehensive review, you can just pause, read the slides, see what works for you, or watch AOS Coach's video, or read the Goonhammer article, which also has a lot of opinions on these. So, for the Blades of Khorne Demon Generals, I think it's really interesting that they have Firebrand, which gives you a Priest Bloodthirster, or a Khorne Priest. So there's a lot of interesting prayers later that I'll go over, and really interesting tech. So which makes that one kind of my favorite. Embodiment of Wrath is also interesting, but I think it's more interesting if you're fighting enemy shooting armies, because that with the 5-up ward that you get for being away from your enemies, that's kind of an easier way excuse me, to replenish models from getting chipped, because I don't think Bloodletters really survive melee exchanges very well. Unrelenting Hunter is basically the Blood Tooth ability, where at the end of the combat phase, if you fought in that phase and you're within 3 inches, you can pile, or if you fought but are more than 3 inches, you can make a normal move or charge. This is very strong, because if you are able to set up a charge in a consistent manner and then activate Apoplectic Frenzy the turn after that, you get some really crazy action economy, and the pain train just keeps going with the out of sequence combat. Note, it says at the end of the combat phase, which means this can technically also work in your opponent's turn. So if you get bottom of the round and this happens at your opponent's turn, you can move or position yourself to be able to take advantage of the fact that it's your turn next. It's kind of insane, really. Lords of the Blood Tribes. Blades of Khorne Bloodbound Generals only. So this is for the mortal stuff. Diabolical Purpose adds 1 to damage characteristics that target heroes. It's okay. Barbarian Lord. Add 1 to run and charge rolls for Blood Reaver's Claws of Karanak, which is one of those underworld units, I think. And Fleshhounds. Holy within 16. This one's just okay. Fleshhounds already have an insane +2 to charge, as you'll see later. Lord of the Gore Chosen add 1 attack characteristics to melee weapons used by friendly Gore Chosen units while they're wholly within 16 inches of the general. This is interesting. Gore Chosen tend to be heroes, so you're only mortal heroes even. So if you get this one, you're adding 1 to the attack characteristics of other heroes, including itself. I am not so crazy about this because the meat and potatoes of your killiness doesn't really come from your heroes, but from your regular units, your Blood Tithe ability, and Skarbrand, who is even more bonkers now, which we'll talk about later. High Priest of Khorne is really good too. This is probably the one I would take if you have a Slaughter Priest as a general, because it lets you use 2 prayers, and the prayers are all crazy. I'll get to this in a second. Artifacts. Man, the artifacts are freaking good. A lot of these are actually returning artifacts from the specific subfactions last time. 4-up mortal wound ward. This ward is solid. Ward rolls cannot be made while within 3 inches of the bearer. This one's also really good if you have a pesky, like, let's say, Maggotkin or Ogre player in your play group and you want to play for fun. This is also a really solid counter to Slanesh right now, because a lot of Slanesh models in the new tome have a ward save. So Argath, King of Blades, is probably a good second Warlord option. Halo of Blood makes its return. Strike first effect applies to the bearer. I really love this one, especially if you're charging with 3 Bloodthirsters. There is some interesting tech where you get to fight first with a Bloodthirster, fight with another one, and there is a Bloodthirster that lets you activate one after the other. So if you use Halo of Blood, there is tech where you get to fight with 3 Bloodthirsters at the same time, which is... Whoever leaked that Blades of Khorne was overpowered might be onto something. It's really good. Okay, Skullshard Mantle. This used to be a 2-up spell shield. This is so much better now. It adds 2 to the Hatred of Sorcery rolls, and the difference between it's now a 3-up save instead of a 2-up, but it's better now because instead of it being a unique spell shield, it is just +2 to a specific spell shield that generates you Blood Tithe points. The only reason this isn't very good right now is because all of the artifacts are busted as hell, so you are spoiled for choice if you're a Khorne player. Next. Murderous artifacts for mortal heroes. Crimson Blade gives a 5-up ward. Blood Rune. If any wounds... If you deal damage to a hero or monsters that are not negated out of the combat phase, you get a Blood Tithe point. It's okay. I'm guessing there is a build where you try to generate as much Blood Tithe points as possible. This one feels a little risky. Next, Blood Secretors only. Instead of having 3 different banners that no one ever took, you now have one banner that I don't think anyone's going to take. You reroll charge rolls for friendly Blades of Khorne within 16, that's okay. Gore Cleaver. This one's the only good one, I think, from last edition, where you get an improved Rend characteristic, but if you roll 6, it causes a mortal wound for it to hit rolls in addition to damage. Alright, being real here... The demon artifacts are just infinitely better than the mortal ones, and I would probably, go for Halo of Blood and Argath just because of my play group and who's in it. I'm looking at you, Nika, a friend of mine that plays Maggotkin of Nurgle. So yeah, probably gonna go for Argath and Halo of Blood here. Next, Prayer Lure. All right, so Blood Sacrifice is back. It's on a 4, and it generates Blood Tithe points. I think this is always a really good pick. I think two minimum of 2 Slaughter Priests per army is solid given the amount of utility they give. Bloodbind is the insane one. Answer value of 3, range of 16. You pick an enemy unit within range that's more than 3 inches from all of your units, or any of your friendly units, and you have to move 8 inches toward the caster, the chanter rather. And you can end within 3 inches of that unit. So you could have a Slaughter Priest or one of your priests, a Bloodthirster Priest, even if that's your command trait. You can have your enemy unit come toward you during your hero phase and then use Apoplectic Frenzy to fight them at the bottom of the phase. This is just absolutely disrespectful tech. And I think that if you're cheeky and you're confident to have like a Bloodthirster chanting Our Father in Heaven during your turn, you will take this. It's hilarious. Blood Bronze Flesh is basically the prayer version of Mystic Shield that you have access to. Killer Instinct is... it gives you an extra normal move, as if the army that you have isn't fast enough already. This one's actually kind of interesting because it can cuck redeploys. You can use Killer Instinct to move a fast unit in your army to be within, let's say, 3 inches of your opponent, and then you can use the Blood Tithe ability at the beginning. What's it called? It was called Murderous, and get within combat to stop them from redeploying. There's so much synergy and movement tech here, it makes Ironjawz look like a turtle. There's so much possibilities with this book. It's so... Oh my god, Khorne is so freaking nuts. Unholy Flames. Improve the rend characteristic of a unit by 1. Also, all these prayers are amazing. There's some of them feel more situational than others, but all of them are fantastic and have some way to buff your abilities to do everything. Witchbane Curse. Start of Hero Phase, subtract 1 from casting rolls. In addition, start of Hero. Okay, every time they fail to cast a spell, and I think this includes when you unbind with Spell Eater Curse. If I have to revisit the wording on that, that unit suffers D3 wounds. I think this Witchbane Curse is really good if you pair it with the invocation Hex Gorger's Skulls, which we'll get to later when we talk about the War Scrolls. This is relatively niche compared to the other ones, and I think the problem with it, even though I think it's good on paper, is that you're choosing between 6 really good prayers already, and that's my biggest issue with that. Everything is good. It's not that any of them is bad. All of them are good. Khorne also gets a new battalion called the Gore Chosen. Gore Chosen units tend to be hero units, mortal hero units that can form this battalion, which are unified and at the same time magnificent. On paper, this is kind of cool if you want to outdrop your opponent and you go for like a 5 mortal hero build, and probably the 6th one's maybe a Bloodthirster or something, and you can do a battle regiment on top of this. Because the biggest weakness of battle regiment is that you normally have too many sub-commanders or commanders to fit, because you normally need a minimum of 3. So you can probably go for a 2-drop if you pick, let's say, maybe like 4 Slaughter Priests or something crazy like that, and you put them in Gore Chosen, and then you get like a Bloodthirster as your 6th one, or Skarbrand even, and then you get like the rest of them in Battle Reg, turning you into an instant 2-drop with Magnificent, which gives you an extra enhancement. That is nuts. You can be a 2-drop with Magnificent. I don't think this is gonna be like an optimal build, because I'm not seeing 5 mortal heroes being the best. I could be proven wrong in the next few weeks, because the internal balance of this book has shifted slightly. I think mortals are more viable now, but demons are still so freaking crazy. So we're gonna go on to the next bit. Skull Altar. They removed Invoke Judgment, where you get to use a non-hero to get rid of an enemy invocation or enemy invocation or endless spell, and now it doubles the casting range for summoning invocations, which is, oh my god! When we talk about Hex Gorger's Skulls later it's gonna be nuts, man. Most of your invocations have a range of 8 inches, and now they're range 16 inches, and they get to move during your hero phase or when they're summoned. This is nuts. It still keeps Witchbane and Words of Hate. Words of Hate rerolls, chanting rolls for all of your priests within 8 inches. So yeah, being a free terrain feature, this is really good. Witchbane causes miscasts on the battlefield, including for all wizards, including your own wizards. If you're taking wizards from like, I don't know, something. Let's say you get Archaeon or whatever. It does D6 mortal wounds instead of D3. So yeah, if you see wizards and you're playing Khorne, you're gonna have a great time, because you're basically going to plow through. You're basically gonna punish them for even trying sometimes. Okay. So many war scrolls in this army, and I'm just gonna kind of plow through them. Skarbrand is more nuts. He has more wounds. He now has Slaughter is now 2s to hit and 2s to win instead of 4s and 3s. Big upgrade. The nerf to Skarbrand is that he tables a lot worse now, and if you're not familiar with Skarbrand, he's unique in that instead of getting weaker the more damage he takes, he actually gets stronger the more damage he takes. So you want him to table faster. So this tabling, this new trend in 3rd Ed where things table a little more slowly is a nerf. But it's still kind of nuts. So like, it's still kind of, Skarbrand is still one of the best options you have. Total Carnage is the ability that he has where he deals mortal wounds to an enemy depending on how wounded he is. At his best table, on a 1-up, he just deals 8 mortal wounds to the enemy. Now Total Carnage cannot be modified. I think there was a way to abuse this in the past where instead of rolling like one die, people were able to roll multiple dice. And you had people in tournaments saying that Skarbrand would deal 100 mortal wounds over the course of five games, which is not hard to believe considering if you tech Skarbrand properly, you could fight 4 times in the battle round with Apoplectic Frenzy. Next, Skarbrand has a 3d6 charge of a 2d6 charge. My god, this guy is bonkers. And not just that, as you'll see later, he actually gets a point decrease. Whoever wrote this tome loves Khorne and loves Skarbrand. Okay. Okay, and this is another change, by the way, for Skarbrand's rage. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below, but it used to be that if you fought in either combat phase in the previous battle round instead of both, he becomes enraged. So it used to be that if you like give him a token thing to fight, if you let him fight in the combat phase in the previous round, any combat phase, and like you throw a token unit away, it calms him down and he suddenly gets to his weakest profile. But now it seems like you have fought in the last 2 combat phases instead. Note, you can also bypass this if you have Skarbrand fight in the hero phase and kill an enemy unit, and then like not fight in either combat phase. It's kind of nutty how they worded this. There's so many weird ways to maximize playing Khorne if you know or understand the minutia of the rules. Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster. This used to be the 310 point Bloodthirster that was useless in the previous edition because Insensate Rage and Unfettered Fury were just instant better picks. All the Bloodthirsters are now 16 wounds. All the Bloodthirsters now move 12 inches, so they're faster and they're tougher. They're giving Wrath, though, a really interesting niche where the breath is now based on the number of enemy models in the unit. So if you're fighting 40 Grots, then you're rolling 40 dice, which is hilarious. The Blood Flail's range is now 8 inches. The Mighty now he has 8 attacks instead of like 6. They hit on 2s now and wound on. I think they hit on 2s now, which is the definite buff. They table better like everything else. This is the one that I was talking about, where if you fight with this guy, and they're wholly within 16 inches of another of Bloodthirster that has not yet fought, then you can fight one after the other, which I think is really good. And Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster is kind of being cemented as like the leader Bloodthirster, because it can issue a command without a command being spent once per turn, which is really nutty in an army with tech that allows you to run and charge with some units. But we'll get to that a little later. Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury. This lost its flagship ability to pile in within 6 to cause units within 16 inches to pile in within 6 inches, and now instead it gains Beacon of the Hunt at the start of the charge phase. You can give a unit wholly within 16 inches 3d6 charge instead of 2d6. This is like a free ability. This is not even a command. Like, this is so freaking bonkers. Just like the other one, 8 attacks now, movement 12, 16 wounds. And it also has the Land Rebels. What does this one do? Subtract 1 from hit rolls caused by enemy units within 3. Whoa! This thing gives your opponents -1 to hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units wholly within 8 of friendly units with this ability. This includes ranged attacks, so if your opponent has a way of unleashing hell and negating the penalty for unleash hell, then this says, screw you. And at the end of the combat phase, these enemy units suffer D3 mortals. This is nuts. Bloodthirster is disgusting. And the last one, Insensate Rage. This is like what made Khorne super nutty in the previous one, where every time they would fight, they deal 6 to wound, then they they deal mortal wounds to everyone around them. So the difference now, the biggest difference, I think, is that instead of being D6 damage, it's D3 plus 3, which makes this far more consistent. All of the Bloodthirsters are amazing, and all of them seem to work best when you are working with them in tandem. Okay? So it makes Baleful Lords such a viable and interesting kind of thing. Although I would probably still play Reapers of Vengeance with all 3 Bloodthirsters. 1 Unfettered Fury, 1 Wrath, and 1 Insensate Rage. Just have them all plow forward, murder into your opponent's lines, murder lust into your opponent's lines with the movement, and then just go nuts. Because in theory, you can do all of this on turn 1 if you can generate a Blood Tithe point with with your priest blood sacrifice ability. You get 1, you proc murder lust, move all 3 bloodthirsters d6 inches. Wait, is it no. Yeah, you can choose 3 units. So you proc them to move all of them d6 inches, then you move 12 inches, then you charge. And you give one of them 3d6 charge. You give one of them Halo to make 1 strike first, and you use the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster as your first activation to trigger another activation. So you're essentially fighting with 3 Bloodthirsters with priority. This is super, super dumb. And I can't wait to try this out on TTS. Skulltaker, Skarnak, and Karanak. These guys have more wounds. I think Skulltaker adds... They're not so interesting. It's basically the same thing. He just has he's just better at killing heroes, or he just gives you more bonuses for killing heroes. He gets strike first when fighting enemy heroes if he challenges them. He does 3 mortal wounds instead of 2 when rolling 6s to hit, and he gets Blood Tithe whenever he kills an enemy hero. That's it. Otherwise, I'm sorry, but I'm still taking Bloodthirsters over this. Karanak. Unflagging Hunter. That is something that is applied to Karanak and the Fleshhounds. They, instead of having rerolls to charges, they now have +2 to charge rolls, which I think is pretty degenerate. After the Okay, so basically Karanak is still trying to snipe enemy heroes or go for them. Kind of not the best unit, because if they kept the same move, save, bravery, and melee attack profile, it doesn't exactly do too much damage. It's just kind of swingy. But the extra 2 to charge rolls is really good. Fleshhounds. Same everything, and has +2 to charge like Karanak. They no longer Okay, so they still unbind, but they can no longer dispel or get bonuses to dispel for having more. The champion has +1 attack. Alright, overall, sort of a buff for the Fleshhounds. Next, Demons. Bloodmaster. The Bloodmaster is now a priest. I don't know if it was always a priest, but in this case it gains a new prayer. Bloodmark. Answer value of 3, range of 16. If answered, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the chanter until start of your hero phase. Add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by friendly Blades of Khorne demon units that target the unit. I think it's okay. +1 to wound is alright. Nothing too insane. Decapitating blow, which all bloodletters have. If you roll 6 to hit, it does damage. It has more wounds now. Range of 2 and 2 damage per swing. Not bad. Used to be 1 damage. Used to be other garbage. Now it's just okay. It's good, I guess, for a backup summon. If you need a Galician champion to summon, I guess it's okay. Not going to be the same as important next season, but right now it's pretty good that they made this one better. Next, Bloodletters. Same everything, except now they're 2 wounds each, so there's going to be a significant point increase. The Hellblades, thank God, now have 2 inch reach, so they can fight in 2 ranks. They now hit on 3s instead of hitting on 4s. They still deal mortal wounds on 6s to hit, but no longer in addition to normal damage, which is okay, because now they have more attacks, and they hit more consistently. So overall, this is just better. Musicians have +1 to charge rolls, and the banner now returns 1 model instead of D3 or D6. I can't remember which, but that's fine because it's 2 wounds, and returning more models if they have 2 or more wounds is kind of nuts. Blood Throne. Basically, all these changes are similar-ish to what the bloodletters have, except that it now has a way to heal whenever it kills an enemy unit and an additional prayer. What's this? Blood Call. I've never seen this. Answer value 3, range 16. Add 1 to the chanting roll if the chanter is within 3 inches of enemy units. Pick a bloodletter or blood crusher unit within range. If it's a bloodletter host, you can return D6 models. Okay, this is like very Night Haunty, where you can return bloodletters. This is interesting. I'm not sure how often you take Blood Throne, but it seems like they're trying to push an archetype where you spam bloodletters to high heaven, have them charge to be able to do decapitating blows on a 5-up, and have a lot of weird ways to recur bloodletters, which have 2 wounds each. This one is actually pretty interesting. So, because I'm not gonna knock this, because if you roll a 6 to the number of bloodletters you return, that's bringing back 12 wounds. Wow, that's kind of gross. Okay, next. Skullmaster. Oh, the basic thing that it gained was that if it hasn't impacted, it has 3 mortal wounds flat. It's no longer D3, which I think is good. Added range, same as all the other Bloodthirsters. That was a 3-up instead of a 4-up save. More wounds. Herald of the Bloodmaster Stampede. Once per battle, start of your hero combat phase, you can see this unique Skullmaster declares a Blood Thunder Stampede. If you do, you can reroll charge units for this and other friendly Blood Crusher units. So they're trying to make an archetype, I guess, where you spam Blood Crushers and all of them get to do that, get to charge. Huh. Okay, that's interesting, because if Blood Crushers have the same musician... Okay, that's interesting. So now we're moving on to Blood Crushers. They now have a 3-up save, thank God, and 5 wounds, making them way tankier than they used to be. They used to be 3 wounds with like a 4 or 5-up save, and they died to a stiff breeze. Now they have decapitating blows, same as Bloodletters, so they don't do it in addition to the normal damage. And they have +1 to charge, and with a Skullmaster can reroll that charge, and their impact hits are much better now. On a 1, nothing happens still. On a 2 to 4, it's 1 mortal wound. On a 5-up, that's 2 mortal wounds. It used to be that it would deal like, I think, D3 mortals if you have 6 or more, which was kind of dumb. Now it's a lot more consistent. Skull Cannon. Still kind of memey, but instead of it being 30 inches with 1 shot, it's now 4 shots that deal D3 damage at 18 inches. I mean, it's a Skull Cannon. Why would you pick a Skull Cannon for Khorne unless you're doing it for the memes? It's still a fun unit. Just not the reason you play Khorne. Realmgore Ritualist is the new unit that was revealed a couple weeks ago. It's 100 points. It's a priest and can desecrate an objective or terrain feature to give +1 to hit rolls for bloodbound units that are within 8 inches of an objective or terrain feature. I think this is okay. They have a prayer that subtracts enemy units' attacks characteristic, and I guess this could be good in lowering your opponent's lethality, but I just feel like this is pretty antithetical to Khorne. The Desecrating Blood Runes ability is interesting. Only works for mortals, and that's okay, I guess, but I don't know. The model is super sick, but it's not really my favorite unit. Could be proven wrong, though. Like, you'll probably see like people spamming 5 of these and be like, wow, this video didn't age well. I mean, that's also possible. Mortal Heroes. Korgus Skull has 6 attacks, rend 2 damage. This Korgus Skull is, in my opinion, the most... The unique character with the biggest difference between how he's written in the lore and how he is. In the lore, he's this super mega badass Doomslayer-like character that can stop Stormcast champions. But in the game, he had 3 attacks, rend 1, D3 damage each, which made him total garbage. Now, however, he has 6 attacks and rend 2 damage each, which makes his pile-in of 8 inches far more interesting. Not just that, but he still keeps his reality splitting axe with the Rend 2 that makes it far more consistent. Any wounds caused by the axe and not which are not well, not negated, which doesn't cause them to be slain, get basically auto kills them on a 5-up. So really cool for killing Maw Crushers or killing like big monster units that get pressured by a 5-up save. And what's cool is that because he piles in 8 inches, then he like gets to threaten those units, even and like you can hold him back for last and have him pile in within 8 inches depending on how the fight goes later on in turn sequence. Lord of Tithe. If this unit's included in the Tithe army, the subfaction, once per battle, end of combat phase, you can say he unleashes the wrath of the Tithe. If you do so, until the end of the phase, each time one of your Tithe bloodbounds is slain, you make one additional murder roll. I think that's cool because if you charge, like, let's say 30 Blood Reavers into an enemy unit and they all die, you're rolling 60 dice, and for every 5-up, that is a mortal wound. If statistics follows, which it never does, that's dealing 20 mortal wounds to an enemy from a unit that's 240 points, dies, and gives you a Blood Tithe. That's actually kind of hilarious. Lord of Khorne and Juggernaut. Okay, one crazy thing is that all the mortals on Juggernauts now have a 2-up save and a 5-up spell ward against endless spells and spells. Kind of crazy. This is on top of the fact that he has Hatred of Sorcery, which is a 5-up spell shield. So if you fight this guy with like Tzeentch or let's say Seraphon or Lumineth, he gets a 5-up spell shield and then a 5-up ward save against all damage you caused him. So basically Khorne has this massive screw you to all spellcasters, which is as advertised and how it should be the case. And what's cool is that when he charges, it now deals 3 mortal wounds instead of D3, which is kind of bonkers. He now has 6 attacks and does 2 damage instead of D3, which is good. He has Lord of the Brass Stampede, which is the same as what I mentioned earlier with the Skullmaster, where you can re-roll charge rolls for Skull Crushers. So mortals stick to mortals, demons stick to demons. Scarblood Wrath. This unit's with so he buffs Wrathmongers to roll additional kill me dice every time they die. The additional murder rolls. Not too crazy. He's okay. Same everything. He's a fun pick, but he's not super interesting in my opinion. Valkia. She is a badass, and I love the new assassin ability they gave her, the Red Angel of Slaughter. During deployment, instead of setting her up, you get to have her be yoinked out of the battlefield at the end of the movement phase. She deep strikes in and hits an enemy unit within 10 inches, and you roll a die. If you roll a 1, nothing happens, but on a 2+, it deals mortal wounds equal to the number on the die roll. So if you roll a 6, that's instant 6 mortal wounds to an enemy unit within 10 inches of you. That is nuts. It can insta-shot a War Chanter, and just having her on the side can help you maybe clear a screen, or it can help you like snipe an enemy hero that's about to die, and she basically like dives into the battlefield, curb stomps someone like 10 inches away, and gets you a Blood Tithe. I think it's very interesting. I think she's gonna have a cool niche in an army if you pick her. The model could use some improvement, but I love the fact that she is interesting now or has a niche. She also has a 5-up ward save now, which I think is cool. Mighty Lord of Khorne. 5 attacks, red, -2 ran, 2 damage, so similar to Korg's Skull, except minus with 1 less attack. Bring me their Skull's ability. What's this? You can use this command ability, start the combat phase, issue a command to a friendly Gore Chosen, which is likely a hero, and you give them a strike first. So, okay, so it creates some synergies. It gives a friendly Gore Chosen strike first, and could be interesting. Bloodsecrator. This was a must pick in the previous edition, and now I think it is still a must pick. It has a 3-up save. Instead of D3 damage, it does 2 damage each. Instead of it being a 16-inch aura that gives +1 attack, it's now once per battle, +1 attack to the entire army. So if you're gonna go pump those bloodthirsters or going for a pump turn, then you can basically just give everything +1. Go absolutely bonkers. Next, Icon of the Blood God. If this unit issues a rally command for bloodbound units with wound characteristics 3 or less, meaning blood reavers or blood warriors, you return them on a 4-up. So the way I understand this, unless this gets FAQ'd, is if you pick 2 blood secretors and you activate Rage of Khorne at the same with both at the same time. Unless it's FAQ'd to say you only do it once, one at a time, or once in the whole battle, regardless of how many blood secretors you have, you can give +2 attack to everything, which I think is nutty. It's basically like having a Wattern for Ironjawz. Yeah. Overall, Khorne seems to be shaping up to be an Ironjawz-esque army now. It's really fast, really brutal, but it takes a turn or two to set up with prayers and a few sacrifices to Blood Tithe, which I think is very thematic, and I'll get to that a bit more later. Slaughter Priest. Must pick in the army, in my opinion, unless the points are really pervasive or really bad. It lost the Bloodbind Prayer, which used to make your opponent move d6 inches toward you, and now it's replaced by that thing that makes your opponent move 8 inches toward you as an option that all people can use. So it's actually just much better. Skull Grinder. It's interesting because it does more damage to enemy monsters and heroes, and he has the ability now to, after deployment, be able to use that hammer to kind of act as a smith and improve the rend characteristic of a bloodbound hero by 1. So I can imagine someone playing an army of bloodbound, an army with like a focus on bloodbound heroes, stacking the rend on some of the units, and based on the situation, and then going ham with mortals. Lots of cool synergies. Aspiring Deathbringer. If the unmodified hit roll for the attack is made by this unit 6, target's hero, attack causes 1 mortal wound and to the target in addition to any damage it inflicts. Okay, that one's okay. This one's supposedly a low point hero. I'm glad they gave him a 3+ save because he's wearing thick as hell armor. They gave him 2 damage, which I think is really good. So Aspiring Deathbringer is just a nice cheap hero. I guess he's like a Doomseeker-esque assassin-like hero. So far, nothing to write home about. But maybe with a combination of artifacts and prayers, this guy gets nuts. Because by stacking prayers and Skull Grinder, you can turn a normal hero into a beater, give him 3 rend, 2 damage each, and with Apoplectic Frenzy, you get to fight twice. Yeah, can be kind of nuts. There's so many weird synergies that you can apply right now. I'm not seeing it yet. I need to playtest it, but there's a lot of potential. Exalted Deathbringer gets a 5-up ward save. Instead of a 4-up save, he has a 5-up save now for some reason. I'd want to hit rolls for attacks made with this unit while it's within 8 inches of within 8 inches of your general. 6 wound, 5-up save with a 5-up ward. I guess it's okay. Oh, sorry, wait. It has 4 attacks. It hits on 3s, wounds on 4s, and does 3 damage each. Never mind. That has interesting, stupid potential. It has 2 rend and 2 damage on the spear. Yeah, so if you can give this guy additional rend and he does 3 damage per swing and you can make him a fight multiple times, and if you're in the Gore Tide and he has +1 to his wound rolls against enemies, if he's in your enemy's objectives and territory, I can see this working, but he's kind of slow, I guess. Again, all these units, really good with the right synergies and buffs. Blood Reavers, they're now 2 attacks each and 3s to hit. That's good. No more +1 to run. It's just +1 to charge now. If they're within 16 inches of Khorne totems, of which I remember the Blood Secretor is 1, they add +1 to wound rolls. So I guess they would wound on 3s if played properly. They're okay. This is your basic chaff unit. I think it would go up in points or stay. I think it stays the same in points. Well, let's check it out later. Wrathmongers. Blood Fury. It's now 3s to hit instead of 4s to hit. They're now Bravery instead of Bravery 6. Wherein like they're a small unit but run away really easily, like Destruction units. If unmodified hit roll for attack made with melee weapons that target this unit is 1, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Okay, so what's interesting about Wrathmongers now is that they add +1 to the attacks of other units, and when your opponent attacks them and rolls 1 to hit, it punishes them. So this is the kind of unit that you'd want to have fighting second or third and not first, because you're probably going to be fighting first with the unit that this thing is buffing, and then your opponent's like, hey, do I really have to hit these nerds? Because if I kill one of them, then you roll murder rolls, and if I roll 1s to wound, I suffer 1 mortal wound. So it's very possible for an enemy unit to kill themselves against a Wrathmonger if they don't have a lot of wounds left, which is kind of hilarious and interesting. Gives them an interesting staple use in the Khorne army. Instead of just cheerleaders, they're also a good a soft but spiky anvil. Blood Warriors. These are Blood Warriors are some of my favorite models in the game. I don't know why Skull Reapers are the image here. Yeah, this is wrong image, but Blood Warriors. Blood Warriors have sick models, but they've always sucked. Now they have a 3-up save, and when they die, they do 2 murder rolls instead of 1. So when you kill one, you roll 2 dice, and a 5-up, that's a mortal wound. That adds up a lot more than people think, especially when they keep the Gore Fist ability, which is if they roll a 6 to save, then they deal a mortal wound back to your opponent. So it's possible for them to also be a really interesting spiky anvil. You charge them, you hit them with like a million attacks. You deal mortal wounds based on the number of 6s to save, and every time you kill one of them, there's a chance to deal more mortal wounds. So these guys actually just want to die. Bloodstoker. You can pick up the D3 Bloodbound units within 3 inches of this unit. So the range is much lower now. It's not as good, and you roll a die for each of those units. On a 1, they suffer a mortal wound because you whip them too hard. But the unit it does buff, though, gets the ability to run and charge. I think this would be pretty amazing if the Mighty Skull Crushers count as Bloodbound, of which I'm not entirely sure. But it lets your Blood Warriors, your Reavers and such run faster, which I think is always a good thing. Mighty Skull Crushers are super tanky now. They're 5 wounds each with a 2+ save, and the same spell shield I talked about earlier. Just like with Blood Crushers, they now deal mortal wounds on a 2 to 4, and 2 mortal wounds on a 5-up on the charge. Overall, still really good. The Ensorcelled Axes, thank God, are 4 attacks rend 1 now instead of like no rend. And their Blood Glaives have rend of 2 now. So overall, the Mighty Skull Crushers are actually an elite fighting unit that are really tough to crack. If you don't have good rend or non-magical mortal wounds, you're going to have such a bad time fighting this unit. Skull Reapers. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks that they're fighting hordes. Not the most exciting. 3 to hit, 3 to wound, 1 wound, 1 damage. Sorry, I'm going to skip over this. Not interesting. I don't like Claws of Karanak, Drum, and Scylla. Those things haven't changed too much, so I'm not going to go over those ones. Korgorath. This was in every start collecting I saw when I was starting out with Age of Sigmar. And basically, it's if it dies, you roll 5 murder rolls. What I think is good, though, is that now it counts as like a mini horror ghast where enemies cannot receive inspiring presence when they're within 3 inches of it. We're going to check out later to see whether the point cost is lowered enough for it to be worth it. But as of right now, it's just okay. Not my favorite unit. Margor's Fiends. You summon a Fleshhound. That's a single model. I guess it's a free Blood Tithe. You have it charge into enemy. It takes Unleash Hell. It's a free Blood Tithe. Nothing too insane. are, I guess, really good because you get to summon it more than 9 inches away from enemy unit, but it gets +2 to charge, so that's kind of cool. Garrock's Reavers. If this really weak unit gets to kill an enemy unit, you get additional Blood Tithe. Yeah, no, this is not something I would pick. It's just not very good. All right, endless spells. This is not endless spells. This should be invocations, but you know, I'm not gonna criticize. I'm taking these slides off of the very prolific like AOS coach. So like, yeah, let's talk about this. Hex Gorger's Skulls reduced range from 12 to 8. I think it's good that they did this so that you remember that everything is a multiple of 8 instead of remembering, oh, the range is 8, but 12, but it moves 8. No, it's now like 8 inches. Instead of a 6-inch like distance you can have between the two skulls, you can now have an 8 inches distance between the two skulls. Hex Gorger Skulls, in my opinion, is now a must pick in the current meta. And on this blessed day of March 19, 2023, when I'm recording this, Lumineth Realm Lords and Disciples of Tzeentch are dominating the battlefield. With the Skull Altar's new ability, you get to summon these 16 inches away from your Skull Altar, and then after that, you get to move an additional 8. So the effective range of this is 24 inches. If you get the first turn, and your opponent is either Disciples or Lumineth, and they don't have a way to get rid of your invocations, you're basically giving them an army-wide, if you position this properly, a debuff that gives them -2 to spellcasting and punishes them for rolling an 8 to cast. And you get to just do this every turn in case you fail. Hex Gorger Skulls, in my opinion, just went up in stonks just because the range is super nuts, and you can set this up on turn 1. Really good shit. Bleeding Icon. It stops enemy units from using Inspiring Presence. Very good Horde killer. In addition, a unit fails Battle Shock with an 8. You roll a die on a 1 to 5. Additional D3 on a 6. Additional D6. Okay, really good. Nothing too insane. It's like a Horror Ghast, which is always welcome. It's like a Horror Ghast that can't be dispelled because it's an invocation, unless your opponent has a priest. Wrath Axe is still Wrath Axe. It's super janky and fun. It's basically like Pendulum, except it strikes twice based on the direction you move it, which I think makes it better. Lastly, points cost. As expected, and as is the trend in 3rd Ed, a lot of units have increased points cost. It has your Blood Warriors now back to 190 as they originally were, but now they're tankier and justify that. Blood Crushers are up by 50 points. They have a better saving throw and more wounds now. So this is actually a steal in a way. Bloodletters are up by 70 points, despite doubling their wounds and their attack characteristic. Blood Reavers are still your 80-point chaff unit, despite doubling the number of attacks they have. The Blood Secretor is now cheaper because it's a once per game ability, even though I'd argue it's much better. The Bloodthirsters are all now an equal 330 points. So I think they're really okay for what they're doing. Hex Gorger Skulls are still 50, which is super solid. A bunch of other stuff increased in points cost, as you can see on the screen right now. And all of them can kind of be justified by having increased wounds or better saving throws. Again, I can't urge this enough. I recommend you check out the Goonhammer article, which we'll post in the description below, and the AOS coach video for his take and opinions on some of these changes, and also like a more, I guess, sophisticated and whole scale rundown of the entire army, as I am just summarizing my opinions on the army based on the slides that I got from his video. Okay, let's talk about some closing thoughts. Blades of Khorne. Whoever wrote this tome actually likes Khorne. Khorne used to have this issue where you'd always advertise them as the army that is super heavy metal, balls to the wall, bloodthirsty, fast, instant, extremely Killian stuff. But That's not what you got. In the previous tome, Khorne was really swingy. It was more of a Johnny type of army, which um, gave you lots of options on how to deal with things, but not enough lethality. In fact, some would say that in second ed lead or early third ed, Khorne was not a very strong book, and it didn't really get a major swing until the White Dwarf article, which freed up a lot of its options in terms of its Blood Tithe rewards. However, Khorne right now looks absolutely nuts, brimming with so much potential. You can play demons. You can play mortals. You can actually mix mortals and demons a little bit better if you ignore the synergies. If you play them as an army, you could just have the Khorne units. Sorry, the mortal units be up in front taking objectives and then like absorbing charges and then dealing damage back with murder rolls, and have your demons be in the back be your hammers. I kind of see several builds coming out of this. You can go for like a horde army, bloodbound army that's very strong against combat armies because it punishes them for engaging them in the form of murder rolls, where you have individual heroes who are very good with by giving them extra rend, buffing them with prayers, and generally just giving other synergistic buffs like strike first, +1 to wound, +1 to hit with the rest of your army. I can also see you going full demons, where you can comfortably march upon your enemy with a 5-up ward save against most of their ways to retaliate against you, which are not in combat, and then just smashing them to death with bloodthirsters. I can see a really strong mix of both, where the mortal units are anvils and your demons are your hammers. I can see an army that's all blood crushers, or an army that's all mighty skull crushers of Khorne, where they all just move forward really fast and like run everything that they touch over. Yeah, Khorne is nuts. This has way more movement options than Ironjawz right now, especially with Murderlust letting you move into combat to pin your opponents during the hero phase. The Bloodthirsters having all these synergies for fighting one after the other, which I've been harping on for a really long time. And the doubling of the range of the invocations, which I think will shut down most spellcasting armies. Khorne looks amazing. And if you really want to get into Blades of Khorne right now, I wouldn't blame you. It's so freaking good. I cannot wait to give this army a run. And yeah, I can't stop gushing about this army, man. Dudes, this army, it went from being like a C tier army to, I think, straight up an S tier army. Everything has a role now. Everything has some sort of use. And I can't wait for all the Blades of Khorne players to come back to playing it with this tome. You know, it's coming out next week, as of this coming weekend, as of the time I'm recording this, and I really want to fight it. I really want to see this thing played to its full potential, because this will certainly reward really good players. All right, I think that is all I have to say on that. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like. And if you want to get more perspectives from our crew on the new battle tomes, maybe get a battle report or events happening in Manila, give us subscribe to our channel. And yeah, thank you very much for sticking with me till the very end. I know this is a solo video, and if this kind of format was something that worked for you, then give us a comment that it works. If you feel like it's much better when I'm bouncing ideas off of someone else, or we're bouncing off ideas off of each other, give us a comment in the video as well. But yeah, we're definitely figuring out how this YouTube thing works, so your feedback is super important to us. That's all I have for now. Thank you for joining me. Good night and happy gaming.